In this lesson, we're going to learn about visualizing intervals on the fretboard. Learning how to visualize interval shapes on the fretboard in a variety of places on the fretboard will help you eventually to learn how to hear intervals more clearly. And once you can hear intervals more clearly, this will lead to being able to translate the sounds that you have in your head directly to your solos while improvising. It's important to be able to visualize interval shapes starting on any string, being able to stay on the string to visualize smaller intervals, to be able to visualize them on adjacent strings or skip strings. So we're going to go through a method for learning all of this material. So the first thing you want to do is to be able to visualize half steps. Now, visualizing half steps may seem simple at the beginning, but can you visualize a half step on an adjacent string? That's one of the big things, because the one thing that I see a lot of guitar players do is make mistakes when they're transitioning from string to string, and they may have a half step and they can't visualize it or hear it, and they end up by accident doing something like that instead of this. So the first thing you want to do is play a half step, be able to visualize that on the adjacent string next to it. Now you should be able to do it here as well. Okay, and like this on all of the strings, and this is where things will be different. The interval will be the same but look different on the G and B strings, and we will have. Now the tendency will be sometimes just to think note names, and then you will not necessarily learn the visualization. So it's really important to really learn that shape, to learn what it looks like and sounds like on one string, on two adjacent strings, and be able to do it on the different strings. You'll go through this entire process with all of the intervals on all of the strings. So you'll try to find that alternate fingering, so whole step and whole step. So go to the next string, the fifth string, whole step and whole step. Okay. Now the fourth string. Okay, and because you get slightly different shapes. You get this on these two strings, and you get this on these two strings. So you really have to know what the interval looks like on each of the adjacent strings and have an alternate fingering in order to become an effective improviser. One example of this is if I'm hearing a line, I should be able to play it here too, or so I just played the same exact phrase that I heard in my mind, but I played it starting on different strings. And you'll notice that that phrase started with a whole step. Sometimes I played that whole step like this, and sometimes I played it like this. And I have to have that flexibility when I'm hearing lines in my head and I'm trying to translate them to the fretboard. And the same thing will go with minor thirds. Okay. So if you're hearing a line, or like that, major thirds. Now here is a different shape, okay? and now fourths on a single string is a big stretch, but I still use this when I'm improvising. I will still sometimes jump up a fourth, so it's very good to still be able to visualize on a single string with the fourth, even though it's a big stretch. And then your different shape, and really see those shapes. The fifth interval, when we find two shapes, will be a little bit different because the second shape, here's your first shape, the second shape will have a skipped string like that. So here's your first shape, your second shape, your first shape, and a little bit different shape there. Okay, and now minor sixth are where people start to have some difficulty with visualizing. So this might take a little extra practice. So that's what your minor sixth looks like on the adjacent strings, and that's what it looks like on your skipped strings. Okay. This is a little more familiar probably. And it's a bit of a stretch here, so that'll take a little practice. And now major sixth. This is a big stretch here. Now let's move on to flat seven. Now you notice that I just played one of these. The reason for that is because it's a big stretch skipping over strings, because you're already skipping over strings to do the first ones. You're actually skipping over two, so it's a really big stretch there. And also here it's a pretty big stretch to visualize. So I typically will just stay with your basic fingerings, the one fingering. And your major seven, same thing. We'll probably just stick with one visualization for now. So I recommend practicing like this, where you take a C and you go through all of the intervals and you start on every string, and you do the alternate fingering so that you can visualize each interval at least two ways. This will help you when you're improvising, because sometimes you may want to be going in a certain direction on the guitar neck. You might want to be going this way, like explained earlier, or go this way, the idea that I explained here. Or you may be traveling in a certain direction on the fretboard, and if you can hear the interval in two ways, those two ways will help you to decide which fingering you'll use while you're soloing. This is constantly happening when I'm soloing. If I hear a line, I might go, so I have the idea in my head, and I have different ways of visualizing and connecting that visualization to my hearing. And those different ways aid me in deciding in the moment which direction to go on the fretboard.